Welcome to the Graybeard Chronicles podcast. Your hosts, Brian Halstead and Kevin Harkins, are two gray-bearded patriots who love God, their family and friends, and their country. The Graybeards are here to inspire, inform, and educate you on a myriad of topics they are passionate about. Brian and Kevin have a strong desire to share this with you to help you live your best life. Sit back and enjoy this amazing podcast as the Graybeards pass along the wisdom of the ages.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. I'm Brian Halstead.
And I'm Kevin Harkins.
And Kevin, we're here to pass along some wisdom of the ages. What the heck does that mean?
We're not perfect, but we do have gray beards. And that means we've got some significant life experience, some life lessons, and some perspectives that are worthy of passing along.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. Let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to take two of this episode. We had a great intro going here, and what you don't know is Kevin had just complimented me on doing a good job of pushing all the buttons that I need to push, because as you guys know that, listen regularly or watch regularly, occasionally I jack that up. Well, about 5 minutes into this conversation, and after Kevin said what he said about the buttons, I realized I forgot to push record on Zoom.
Here we are.
So this is take two, and I know I said we don't edit these episodes, and we typically don't. We had to restart this one anyways because we completely missed the first part of it. So welcome, Kevin. Good to see you again, man.
Thank you very much, Brian. And hello, Kelley.
Yes,
it's
Kelley.
Nice to have you.
Nice to see you again.
It's like deja vu.
It is.
So I have two things that I want to say in response to this. Number one is, and this happens to me all the time, the best things I ever say is when I'm on mute on a video call and I'm going on, and all of this amazing stuff comes out, and I'm like, wow, I'm really impressed with myself. And then realize that they're all going like, trying to give me a signal that I'm on mute.
Yeah. Did you guys get that?
Right.
What? No?
Right.
Oh, it was brilliant.
It was brilliant. So that's thing number one. But I will say this again, and even more so now, when we were having some pre-recorded banter with Kelley, who you'll introduce in just a second, that was enough to pique my interest quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to the discussion, Kelley. Thank you very much. But even, did you notice, and I did, how she just rolled with man, I forgot to hit record. And she just said, take two, let's do it. Let's get on it.
Well, you were in mid-sentence, and I just kind of went, damn it.
Right.
When I realized I forgot to hit it. And you're like, what?
It's the story of my life that we're talking about right here. I do this all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, then obviously you understand the chances of it happening. So thanks for being understanding and patient.
Well, I just mean I forget to hit record or screw things up or forget to show up where I'm supposed to be. It happens all, and I'm like, wait, what did I forget?
I was at a doctor's appointment the other day, and there was a lady there. I felt bad for her. She's like, sitting there trying to check in, and she was a month early. She was there on the right number, as far as the date goes, but she wasn't supposed to be there until next month.
Wow. Not just a day, not just a week.
Yeah. I've been like
month.
a day early for stuff before,
Yeah.
but I've never been a whole month early. But I felt bad for the lady. I was like,
Well, we are here on time right now where we should be, and things are rolling.
Yes.
Again.
And we've got this outstanding guest with us tonight, and we got to tell you who she is. So with us tonight, we have Miss Kelley Sgroi, and Kelley is a licensed mental health counselor, relationship therapist, and I'm going to back up and say the most important part of her life, at least in my opinion, is she's a mom of triplets. And, there's just not a lot of those walking around. So that's pretty cool. And she's had some awesome life experiences and maybe some not so awesome life experiences. And she's been able to turn those experiences and challenges that she's had into stories to help other people. And we look forward to hearing some of that tonight and hearing what you've got going on and what you've been doing, especially since the pandemic. You talked about some interesting things that have occurred in the mental health world since the pandemic, as far as licensing and so on. So that's pretty cool. Definitely want to hear some more about that. So welcome, Kelley. Thank you for being here.
Guys. So, well, that was super fun. I'm thinking that aside from the gray beards and, the distinguished stuff we talked about before we hit record, this is actually.
Oh, say it again. It was brilliant.
Well, this is kind of par for the course. If you think about like our ages, you're supposed to forget things, right? It's like, oh, it's the way things go,
Yes,
right?
We've been inflicted. I keep saying though, I've got a mental checklist. I just didn't go through it. I'm going to have to do a written checklist. And yeah, that's because, apparently that CRS is real.
You should do a checklist. My experience with Marines is they got stuff written down and they do it right.
Well, both of our backgrounds,
Right.
You don't do anything without a damn checklist.
That's right.
That's
right.
Hey, well, why are we operating without a checklist?
I know. Yeah.
We should
You have a checklist to remind you to look at the checklist because that's what I need.
No, we're just going to put a big ass checklist up here so you can't help not looking at. It's right there. You can't miss it.
I'm like, I need a list, but I need a list to remind me to bring my list. I went to the store yesterday to Walmart, right? And I'm walking around Walmart and I'm like, I know there's something that I came for. 3 hours later, I got home and I'm like, I forgot to get an ironing board. I went there for an ironing board. I bought like 4 other things, never got an ironing board. I'm like, apparently I don't need to iron that bad. So.
But I got some cool stuff.
Boy,
Yeah, I don't. I couldn't even. I'm like, I know I'm missing something. I know it. It's that like feeling. I just know, but I don't know what it is. So I guess I should have brought the list. So
I want to hear, when we talked earlier, you briefly mentioned that you started this career field of being a counselor when you're 40 in your 40s, right?
Yeah, my 40s. Yeah.
And that's so what got you there? Because that's I think that's a perfect age, because I think that's the age where people start, for many, and at least it's been my experience, that it's the age people start figuring out who they are in the world and what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and that's so true for me, because I know I had to go through everything I went through to get here, but now that I'm here, I'm like, gosh, I can't believe I haven't been doing this like all along. So it's kind of that, catch-22 in a way. So I was a dental hygienist for 20 plus years. I started out as a dental assistant. I did that, 17-year-old high school graduate thing where I had no idea what I was doing and went to all these schools thinking I really wanted to be a dolphin trainer. Like that was my dream job. I was going to work at SeaWorld and swim with Shamu, and that just wasn't panning out. So I ended up going to college and dropping out and went into a dental assisting program. Loved it, had no idea what I was going to be doing, loved it. Then went to the dental hygiene school, became a dental hygienist, did that for about 10 years. And then I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree, and became an educator. So I taught dental hygiene for the last 7 years or so of my career. And I was burned out and I needed a change. And so at this point in time, my kids were a little older. I had already gone through cancer treatment. So right before, about 2 days before my 41st birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I did 4 months of chemotherapy, 6 weeks of radiation, some bunches of surgery. And so I thought I wanted to become like an oncology nurse, right? I thought I wanted to go into that field. And I looked into programs and I realized that I had done my sciences 100 years ago and was going to have to repeat all those things. And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not going back through all that. So I wanted to look into how I could still be in a helping profession without doing that. So I looked into this counseling program, and my original thought was that I was going to go into counseling for cancer patients. Got through, I think I was 42, 43 when I started, got through my program. In the meantime, like my daughter, I have 2 sons. And so my daughter went through her own middle school, high school girl crisis. And I realized that our adolescent girls, especially now in this world, all our kids, but our adolescent girls were in big trouble. She went through the whole cutting, suicidal thing, just this mess. So then I was like, oh, I'm going to work with adolescent girls. I needed the funny farm after that thought. But anyway, I finished my program and, I wasn't licensed yet. So I started applying for jobs anywhere that didn't require a license. And I got this job in a methadone maintenance clinic. No idea what I applied for, no idea what I was interviewing for, walked in. And I have to say, it was the best job I've ever had in my entire career, my entire professional career. I became part of a team. I had a supervisor that was probably 20 years-ish younger than me, who was the best supervisor I ever worked for. And really that 2-year stint there changed my life as far as who I am as a professional today. I really just learned to trust my knowledge, my instincts, my intuition, and my ability to instill hope. And I kind of got there in this roundabout sort of way. So yeah, it's been a interesting journey to say the least. I always say, like, nothing really goes the way I plan it, but it does go the way it's meant to, I guess. Usually life is what happens when I'm busy making plans.
Yes, indeed. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, actually, that what you just said was a good segue to one of the questions I wanted to ask you about, and it was the spiritual aspect that's prevalent in in your customer-facing material that's out there. That the phrase I saw was deeply spiritual, and that's an important thing to me, certainly. I know it is to Bryant as well. What does that mean to you, and how do you bring that into what you're doing to help people?
Yeah, so it's really I bring it in very carefully.
Okay.
So I had a pretty traumatic experience with a boyfriend about 6 years ago that left me kind of in that spiraling downhill. Well, let's just say it was like a downhill more than a spiral. It was a really rough time for me, and I found this. I went to therapy, and I found this therapist, and one day she said to me, "What if I told you that this person was your soulmate?" And I swore at her a few choice words, and she said, "I don't mean in a romantic, partner way, but I mean as a soul family." And, I respected this person enough to listen to what she had to say. Of course, she waited several months into our therapy before she presented this to me, because I probably would have run out of there like she's crazy. But I was just intrigued enough by her comments that I embraced reading some of the books that she recommended, and kind of jumped on this whole new journey of recognizing myself as a spiritual being, as a soul inside a body, instead of this body person living in the world.
Okay.
So that really changed my life. Huge change.
And it changed it because you embraced this part of you that knew there was more to you, and therefore you needed to go on and work hard to improve yourself, or what?
I also embraced that these experiences I had were meant to happen so that I could learn something, that my soul and this other person's soul, as well as all of the ones that I interact with, had made choices prior to this physical life, and this is my belief, that were meant to be lessons, and they pushed me through that experience. And I don't know, maybe that person was supposed to learn something from it. I don't know what our interaction was meant for. But what it did was help me eliminate years and years of guilt and shame for the mistakes I had made and relationships that didn't work, including my marriage. I was with my ex-husband for 18 years.
Yeah.
So I was able to forgive myself for, at least for the most part, I'm going to say 97%. There's a little piece of me that's human that wants to hang on to that beat myself up stuff. But I was able to look at my life choices and recognize that maybe these relationships were not meant forever. They weren't meant to be from, till death do us part. They were meant to teach me something, to get me to another level. another place on my journey so that I was able to then teach and guide. And if that was my purpose, you know, I had asked a lot of times, why did I get cancer? I was healthy, I ate well, I exercised every day. There was no genetic predisposition to it. And I was able to look at that like, well, I was able to embrace that and get through it and then help other women on their cancer journey. So maybe my purpose here was to help other people find their spiritual journey. And if I had to go through what I went through in my non-spiritual beliefs to get to this point, then it was certainly worth it. You know, there were a lot of contributing factors. I had read a couple books that I didn't want to read. I bought all the books this therapist recommended to me, and there was one book in particular, I picked it up and I threw it in a drawer, and I'm like, oh hell no, that looks crazy to me. But you know, a few months went by and I was sitting around a campfire and somebody asked me if I had read this book. And I was like, no, but I have it, but it's like super hokey to me. I don't really think it's for me. And she said to me, read it. She goes, it was such a great book. And so I got home from camping the next day and pulled that book out of a drawer, and I read it from start to finish without pretty much ever leaving my couch. And it was a book that really changed my life spiritually. So the book was Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. And if you haven't heard of it, it's about past life regression. And you know, we'll go off on a whole nother spiritual tangent with that.
Okay.
But it really changed my viewpoint on my life, because I really needed to believe it was all worth something, and I didn't just end up like in the ground at the end of however many years. And that was a catalyst for me. So my spiritual journey has since really just continued over the past 6 years in such an amazing way, where my life today is drama free. Like I looked at drama and was so addicted to it, and so addicted of being a part of it and being in on the gossip and being a part of all of these things. And as I learned and grew and read and embraced this new version of me, I was like, whoa, I need like the garlic around my neck to keep all that drama out of my life. Because like, I'm like, no. Yeah, it just really changed how I look at people. You know, I look at people so differently. Now I just look at all of us like everyone's struggling to figure it out, like to get through and make sense of it all. And for me, not trying to make sense of it all and just allowing my journey to unfold made so much more sense.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier.
Yeah. So how do you use that to help others? How do you work that in?
So one of the biggest things I do for a lot of people, because not everyone's ready to embrace this, you know,
Right.
Not everyone's waking up and seeing that and they don't have the same beliefs. We have to take into consideration culture and religion, and, you know, in my field, it's difficult.
Right.
I know immediately if I'm dealing with somebody that is on this similar journey, on a parallel journey, and ready for new information. It's almost like intuition, you know, it's like my intuition's like, ding, 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 this one's ready. But for me, I try to help people understand that everything they hear in their head is a program. It's a recording. It's a series of messages we've been receiving since the day we were born about who we are. Right? I was born and I was told my name is Kelley and I'm a girl, and I never chose that. Right? One of the first things I ask my clients is, why'd you pick your name? And they're like, I didn't pick my name. My parents picked my name. But yeah, that's like the first thing you were told about yourself that you didn't choose. And then whether we're male or female, back, you know, when we were just not getting all the other stuff in there, we were told what was expected of us based on I screw those things up all the time, those pronouns. I'm a mess.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were told so many things about ourselves, what was expected. what was expected of girls. You were going to, wear dresses and be a mom someday. And if you carried your baby doll upside down, you were scolded because you can't do that with babies. And boys played in the dirt and you had to be rough and rugged, and all these messages. And not living up to those roles and expectations led to guilt and shame, because we just worked harder and harder and harder to live up to that. Humans, and I did this with my kids, we teach each other just like we train our animals, with rewards and punishments, right? If I did what my mom wanted me to do, I got a reward, and if I didn't, I got punished. And so I tried harder and harder and harder to get the reward. The problem is now we're dealing with other people that have their own sets of issues that they've inherited down the line, and now we're dealing with generations of dysfunction. So I try to help my clients recognize that trust your body and your feeling, your inner feeling, and not so much the messaging that you hear in your head, because it's constantly telling you mixed stories.
Yeah.
And that's really, and that nothing's personal, right? Nothing anybody ever does has anything to do with me, even if they do it to me or say it to me, because they have their own set of lenses and perspective that they're coming from. So when I take it personal, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So how can people, the messaging that you're talking about, how can people change that messaging? What recommendations would you give them?
Yeah, so I try to help people remember, like, when you heard it, and does it feel true? We tell ourselves all the time, I said before, I'm the overachieving perfectionist, right? I believed that I had to be perfect. And I remember one day, years ago, when I was in treatment when I was about 17 for an eating disorder. And one of my therapists asked me, who told you had to be perfect? And I said, no one ever told me I had to be perfect. I just knew. I knew I had to be perfect because of the messages that I got. So I start reframing, and we call it in therapy cognitive reframing the messagings, changing it. So when I'm telling myself that I need to be perfect, then I have to start asking myself, well, what actually is perfect? Because between the three of us, we all have a different idea of what's perfect. So then you throw in hundreds of thousands of people, and every one of us is going to say a different story. And then the media is going to tell you tomorrow that this image is perfect, and it's going to change. So how do we measure that? We have an idea of at 40, where we're supposed to be in life. You're supposed to be married with your kids and the house and have a secure job and doing X, Y, and Z. But that's not the path for everybody. Right. So who decided that was the law? That was the way it was supposed to go. If you didn't, if you get divorced, for me, that was a huge failure.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of those societal norms that are out there that
Correct.
people think they have to, align with, and it's just not true. You don't have to.
Exactly. Society decided it. We didn't, right? The society as a whole said this is how it is, and we all tried to conform to that.
I have an observation that just listening to you talk and tell the stories, and this goes all the way back to, again, pre-recorded or once recorded but not properly. Second recording.
Not properly.
Right?
Oh, look, what is that?
And Brian and I have talked about it many times on the podcast in a variety of settings, and that is, we have the ability to interpret and to react and to reframe things that happen to us. Yes. And you've done it. You've done it with all of these stories about your own life. And the one that really jumps out is you meet this person who ends up becoming a very difficult relationship, and then your therapist says, have you ever considered that person to be your soulmate? I mean, that's one of those sort of hit yourself in the face, like, what do you mean? This person's not my soulmate. But you're able to reframe that to say, wow, that person had a very significant impact on my life to mold and shape me to become the person that I am today as a result.
Yes.
And for that reason, that's the soulmate part of it. And just the whole reframing of a variety of things that have happened to you, I believe is a very healthy thing. And if that's what you're using also as a therapeutic technique to help folks, I think that's great. So long as we don't go too far down that path, because I guess you could become delusional if you reframe everything.
Well, right? And what's interesting too is, and this just occurred to me when we were talking about this, and I've had this view before, but I've never had it with using this terminology. So it just occurred to me that the whole soulmate thing, going back to a societal norm, right? So we talk about soulmate as a singular thing.
Correct.
What if soulmate isn't a singular thing, that you have a cadre of soulmates that throughout your life you're supposed to interact with, and some are there for your entire life, some are there for just portions based on the interaction that you need to have with them during that time in your life. I mean, that's a different way to look at it.
So to back that up, Brian, my most recent, like this journey, this is where this has led me. My belief is, when you meet somebody and you instantly connect, like you've known them forever,
right?
It's almost, in this soul perspective, you're meant to meet at that point in time because it was planned. Your souls came together. There's so many different ways to look at it. I use our energies as well. Like, I talk a lot about law of attraction and energetic vibration, and how we are cellular, we're scientific, we're atoms, we're held together. And whatever we're focusing on and thinking about is what we're kind of creating in our own environment. And I back that up by saying, my parents always told me that I could never catch a break. Like, I was like one step forward, 3 steps back. Like, I just remember so many times hearing, you just can't catch a break, can you? And I believed that wholeheartedly. And guess what? I couldn't catch a break.
Yeah.
Everything wrong happened, and that's all I could see.
Yep. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
I was. And when I shifted that to go, wait a minute, I'm catching tons of breaks, right? I'm still alive.
Right.
I survived this. Like, I have all these breaks that have been given to me. My life started changing when I started looking at, I tell this story to clients a lot. When I first started my business, it was 3 months before COVID hit. Like, go figure, right? End of October 19, open a business. There was a point in time where there was like $5 in my bank account. I'm like, man, paying bills, a mortgage, a rent. And I looked at my bank account and I was like, whoa, I have $5. Right?
Yeah, right.
Guess
there you
what?
go. There's people out there that don't have that. Yeah.
I got to the end of COVID and I made it through my first year of business in a pandemic. That was positive.
You bet.
I didn't make a whole lot more than that, but I was still, my doors were open still, and I was getting busier.
Yeah.
And to me, that was like, I'm successful.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm not a billionaire. I'm not even a millionaire, but I'm alive and functioning. So.
And helping people.
Right.
And helping.
Right.
And I think
and you're happy with the person that's looking back at you in the mirror. And
most of the time.
Yeah.
And when I get unhappy is when I buy into those societal norms, right? As a single woman, I'm 51, I'm supposed to be in a partnership, right? Like, every Valentine's Day comes around and people are like, oh, what are you doing for Valentine's Day? And I'm like, I'm doing the same thing I do every day, nothing. So last October, I spent 2 weeks traveling in Utah, and I hiked all 5 of the national parks in Utah. And if I could count, I wish I had $10 for every person that asked me if I was out there alone. And I was like, yeah, I'm alone. Like, I hiked over 100 miles that 7 days that I was there, right? Oh, are you out here traveling alone? I'm like, of course I am. May 10th, I fly out of Tampa to go to Ireland for 2 weeks. I travel alone. 10 years ago, I had such paralyzing anxiety. It was debilitating. I couldn't even be in my home alone, never mind travel to another country or do anything on my own. So each step of my journey, and what I remind myself about my anxiety is it's, misplaced fear. I'm afraid of something I don't know or I can't control. And when I think about it, everything's unknown. I've already survived more unknowns than I could count.
Yeah. When you mentioned the anxiety when we talked earlier today, I thought about this and I didn't mention it. Mel Robbins. Are you familiar with Mel Robbins?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's got some amazing stories about her own anxiety and what she's done to overcome that.
Yeah.
Excellent info.
Yeah. There's a quote on one of the quotes that I liked a lot on your website, and I'm going to read it here, and I just want you to kind of react to it and tell us why you put that on there. But it's a Shakespeare quote. We know who we are, but not what we may be. We know who we are, but not what we may be. That's I mean, every time I think about Shakespeare, the guy's he was amazing. Still is amazing. However many years. How long ago did he write? I don't know how long ago, but
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
I mean, way before you were born, and I mean, that was a long time ago.
So
way,
we know
way
who we are.
before I was born. Yeah.
Well,
So,
yeah.
I think it's so perfect because there are days I stop and I go, how the hell did I get here? Like, how did I become this version of me?
Yeah.
Right. Like, I remember being so different. Like when I talk to my clients now and I make suggestions and, I say, this is what I see happening. And I give them feedback. I tell them, I know this because I was you. Like I was you. Like I lived like that. I had anxiety. I was afraid of my own shadow. I'd never been alone. Now I travel alone, right? I made horrible choices in relationships because that was better than being alone. And then now I'm like, but was it? So I know who I was told I was, and I know who I was trying to become, and what I was trying to mold myself into and be like. But it wasn't until I allowed who I really am to come through that I was able to start seeing who I could possibly be.
Yeah.
And the perfect example for that is I say I'm an extroverted introvert. I'm an introvert by personal choice. I am super extroverted in my element. I can talk to people that I connect with. If I am out in the woods or in the mountains on a trail, I'm all in. I can have a conversation with anybody. I'm great with my people. But if you throw me into a social setting, like a crowded area, a bar scene, heck, I went to Rome. Rome scared the crap out of me. Like I wanted to never leave my hotel room. It was so frightening and just so big and loud. And, I was like, whoa, so intimidating. I want to be in my little bubble instead of those situations. And I was like at every party and hosting every party, and I had to be in the mix of everything because I felt like then I'd feel like I was enough, right? If everyone knew me and I was popular and I had the best parties, and I would feel like I was complete and contributing and people would love me and I wouldn't be alone. And I still felt empty and lost and alone. And then when I allowed myself to explore what really felt good to me, which means hiding in my house with my 2 cats most of the time. The only time I ever feel like I'm missing out on something is when I get up here and I go, wow, I really should be out doing something like where the people are. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, but there's people out there and I'm okay. Yeah.
Right. We haven't seen any guest appearances from the cats.
Yeah, it's it's nighttime. They're like, they're like, did you feed us? That's all they care about. They actually, I think they were dogs in another lifetime. They act like dogs. They're strange. They're huge too.
What you were just saying reminded me of another thing that I'd like to share. Sorry. No, there was I've heard it many times, but the one that's come to mind right now is in the movie Molly's Game. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't.
Kevin Costner and Jessica Chastain are the 2 kind of star characters. And the movie starts when Molly Bloom, who is the star of the movie, is a girl, and she was turned out to be it's a true story. It's about an Olympic skier who gets injured at the Olympic trials and doesn't make the Olympic team. That's just a piece of it. But anyway, he says to her when she's a girl, "Who's your hero?" And I don't know if this was a true exchange or not, but it makes the point. And she thinks for a minute and she goes, "I am." He's like, I don't really understand. "I am?" And she said, "Yeah, I am projecting myself into the future. I'm this amazing person. And that's my hero. That's who I want to be. And that's who I'm going to be." And it's just an amazing, really cool sort of mental technique that people can use to sort of put themselves out into the future and become that person that they want to be, that really truly becomes their hero. I just think
Yeah.
that's a really neat sort of mental construct.
But and I have chills when you said that, because that is like we can create our own
Yeah.
reality like that, right? So now we get into a whole nother level of neuroscience and
Yep.
and how we can change our brain, our neural pathways in our brains. Like Dr. Joe Dispenza is one of my favorites for that, just really taking a look at how we create our own reality with our thoughts. We think it and we believe it and we put it out there, and he talks about so many different studies of medical conditions that have been cured just by our minds.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think we underestimate the power of just the human mind and our bodies to just regenerate and heal. We don't think about it, right? We give all that credit to doctors and medicine, but we have so much power within ourselves to change our own lives.
Yeah, underestimate and underutilize.
Yeah. Well, it's easier to let someone else help or do it, or wait for someone else to be your hero and rescue you.
Yeah,
I say that all the time.
or you don't know what you don't
hard.
know. You don't know what you don't know, and people don't realize until they hear a message like that from you or someone else that's talking about the same subject, that you have the the ability to create your reality based on your thoughts.
If you don't
your
have
thoughts
the tools.
create your behaviors, and your behaviors create your results. And there's a link there. And if you want to change something, figure out where the broken chain is and fix it.
I'm super visual in therapy sessions. I love to use examples with my clients, and I talk about one all the time. And like you said, what you don't know, you don't know. And until you have the tools, you can't apply it. And so I talk about, if I'm going to build my foundation, and I go into my tool shed and I have a spoon and a garden trowel and a shovel. Well, I know all three are going to get the job done, but I know like the spoon is going to take way longer than the shovel. So I grab the shovel and I start digging, and you guys walk up and you're like, Kelley, what are you doing? And I'm like so proud of myself because I'm building this foundation, and I'm like 3 feet into the dirt. I'm sweating and it's a mess. And you're like, why aren't you using the excavator? And I'm like, I was in my tool shed and this is all I had. I could have used the spoon, but man, I'd be digging forever. And you're like, no, Kelley, the excavator, that big yellow thing over there. And I'm like, holy crap, what do you mean? You're like, see the claw? It does digging for you. And now I have a new tool in my toolbox, but I had no idea what it was. So how could I use it? And that's just the true fact of it. And when we talk about what we've learned, it took me years to not feel guilty about recognizing that my parents didn't do such a great job all the time, right? Like that was a horrible thing to think.
Right.
But then I was able to reframe that and go, well, they did the best they could with the tools they had.
That's
those were their tools.
Right. Yeah, I really like
there's training out there, but it's not mandatory, and a lot of people don't attend.
No. And then the books, there's no book that says, hey, if this happened, that would be a big book, right? Like if you had a book that embraced every scenario.
Yeah,
you can't do that. I love that when people try to create policy and procedure that's going to cover every scenario. It's impossible. You've got to create a framework, because that stuff's going to happen you didn't foresee or didn't even fathom.
But they played every scenario out in their mind, didn't they? And at 3 a.m. they played that whole thing out and didn't sleep at all.
Right.
And then the person they wanted to have that conversation with didn't show up at work the next day, so they didn't sleep for nothing.
Yeah.
But we do that in our own realities. There's so many aspects. And I think I said, I don't remember if it was pre-recording or recording, but I did say that.
Yeah, because there were a couple different sessions there, compliments of me.
From my therapeutic approach, I'm super integrated, and I don't use one method because I don't believe there's any such thing as cookie cutter therapy. We're all different. And I have one client that she'll tell me something and I'll go, and she'll go, shit, here comes the 70 questions. And she just knows that I'm gonna start asking questions and she's not gonna like it. And she'll sit there, she's like, I don't like this. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
If this was easy, everyone would do it, right? We would all be evolving and doing this work. It's not easy. But I take the person before me and I meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Because my job is to offer the guidance and support, not make you change.
Right.
I can't make you change. I had a hard enough time changing myself, and I wanted to. So one of the things people ask me a lot is, how do I make so-and-so do this? I'm like, you can't. It's impossible. Just give it up now. You're never going to make someone else do it.
So based on this, this actually leads to another question. Great segue. See, I got all these questions are right there. I'm looking at them all, and you're kind of checking them off. But I kind of know the answer, but I'm gonna advance the question to the next level. There's obviously not gonna be one tool or technique that you use because everybody's different. Every circumstance is different.
Yeah.
But if there were just one or a couple really key psychological sort of constructs or concepts that you would want our listening audience to walk away with about the world that you live in and how you help people. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but is there something that just pops to mind about, I don't know, the human condition, the human mind, the human psychology? What would you, how would you react to that?
Yeah. So I believe, and this is how I live my life, we're driven by that ego, right? Like the human condition is ego. We're driven by a societal norm, societal conditioning to be approved of, to seek validation. Everything's external. We have that external validation, that need for approval from the outside. We're never ever going to get that approval from every single source we seek it from. Seeking that external validation for me was part of my destruction and like my rebirth, because it blew up eventually. And that's part of why we have so many addictions and unhealthy coping strategies. No one knows how to cope because we're constantly looking for approval and validation. So stop looking outwards and start finding out what it is that you need, what's missing. I go along with the nothing's personal. Everything that's happening is because we're all coming from that ego perspective, trying to fulfill a void, and we're trying to get it from each other instead of internally. But everything you need is inside already, right? I tell my clients, you were born enough. You came into this world enough. You were good enough. There was nothing wrong with you. Blank slate. You've always been enough. You're still enough. But you were given a sense of roles and expectations that led you to believe you weren't enough. Yeah. And that's just a story.
Powerful stuff. This is really good stuff. And actually reminds me of several times, Bryant, you have said it, that we so often in life, and this is the same thing said differently. We place control of our lives out there.
Yes.
Through all of these external forces, because what you said, we're worried about what people think, or we're worried about what our boss is going to think or interpret or whatever. And yes, we have to live within certain societal norms and boundaries, but we don't have to allow that to define us and really control us. And Brian has said that many times. And so there you go.
Well,
Brian.
And think about just mistakes. Like we hold ourselves to such a high level of expectation that we're not allowed to make mistakes. Like if we make mistakes, I know for me when I was younger, if I made a mistake, I would pretend I didn't. I was so afraid of making mistakes, or I'd blame someone else. Like I vividly remember this. And because it feels bad, and we're going to get in trouble, and people are going to think we're stupid and whatever, they're going to judge us based on that. But then we have this other saying that, we have to learn from our mistakes. But if we're not allowed to make mistakes, how do we learn from our mistakes? It's like this cycle of which one is it? I know, and I tell my clients this all the time, my biggest growth came from my biggest mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. Like I screwed up, I made mistakes, I've had regrets. But I had to come to terms with them, because no matter how many times I beat myself up for it, I couldn't go back and fix it. So I had to address it the best I could, make amends with the people that I could apologize to, or let those people leave my life and accept that that was the end of that relationship or situation, and then move on and just continue to become the very best version of myself. And the very best version of myself is not jumping through hoops for the world out there. It's making sure that I'm doing what feels good for me and trying to sort that out. And there's no perfect science to this, you know. One of the things, there's a great book by Debbie Ford called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, and it's about shadow theory, and our shadow. And one of those other books that changed my life not that long ago.
The dark side of the light
Dark
chasers?
Side of the Light
Oh,
Chasers.
that's a neat visual. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
go ahead.
Yeah. So she talks about how we have to, you know, law of polarity is that everything has an opposite, right? So to know good, we have to know bad. To know truth, we have to know lies. Like, we always have the opposite, the bad stuff, but our shadow self hides it. It's a Carl Jung theory, back from Jungian, right? So our shadow self is, we don't want to admit we have that piece. And so I notice now, whenever I pass a judgment on anybody, whether it's out in public or, you know, someone I see, I immediately, the second I become aware of my thinking, because it's always in my brain, like, who does that person think they are? And then I have to stop myself and, like, literally come home and sit there and go, what was that about? Like, what about that person do you not like about yourself? What is it in that person that poked something? It's always about me. It always is. Every time I stop, I go, yeah, that was all about me. Like, I was either that person in the past, I have those characteristics now, or in the future, given the right circumstances, I could act that certain way. And that for me was a hard truth, and it was painful, awful, but so truthful. And it made the way I see people so different. Now I can go, yeah, every one of us is always projecting onto someone else. It's like our mirror, right?
No doubt.
When I see it, I stop.
Yeah. So without disclosing anything about someone that would violate any privacy, can you detail or summarize the most successful coaching or counseling relationship that you've had to date?
Oh my goodness. I have some really great ones. You know, I think that it really depends on where someone is in their process. I had one lady who was doing some women's empowerment coaching with me, and she came in one day and she's like, you have to listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza's series on Gaia. It's called Rewired. And she said, he teaches what you taught me. And like, she was indicating that I had founded this whole thought process, and like, he was now teaching it. And I giggled and I was like, I'm gonna have to listen to it, but I think maybe he was teaching this before me. So it's those moments. I was working with a couple weeks ago, and there's times when couples come in, and that's really one of my passions right now, is working with couples, because COVID was not nice to our family dynamics.
Right.
You know, relationships have really suffered since everyone was locked up together.
Right.
And I had this couple that I was questionable, like how they were gonna stay together. But we were plugging along, and we were in session, and we were doing an exercise, and the next thing I knew, they were like yelling at each other, like just totally heated. It went from like calm to explosive. And so, you know, we took a step back, and we talked it through. We sorted through that problem, and she said, very teary, she's like, I'm really worried now that the rest of this night's going to be a disaster. Like, he's going to be mad. We're going to go through this week. It's going to be horrible until we see you again. Out of nowhere, this guy picked up, we were doing some open-ended question cards through the Gottman method. And he picked up the card and he went, if you could be any animal in the world, what would it be? Like, just so flat and dry. And we just started, all three of us started cracking up. Like, this session that exploded turned into this hysterical, like, so out of character for this man. She started laughing, teary, like she was so appreciative. And I was like, and that's how it's done. Like, that's how you repair from a huge blow up like that. So just using different techniques when they're called for. And I feel like all I do is like read and learn and change and try to bring new methods in and new techniques. And that helps me as much as it helps my clients, because I use all these things in my life, right? I use all these things with my parents who are never going to change at 80 years old. I use these things when dealing with my kids so that my kids don't grow up and say things like that about me, which they may, but you know, so that I have better relationships with my kids.
Yeah.
I use them in my own life because I see them work, and I'm always just like grabbing another book, like, ooh, what's in here? What can I learn from this? Or taking another course and trying it. One of the best situations I ever had in my life, and this person was not even a client. I had just started my business. And I had invested a crap ton of money in one of these funnel programs, like a crap ton of money I didn't have. I don't recommend it. But I didn't know any different, and I got taken. And I had this woman on the phone who watched a video and went through this funnel, and she was in bad shape. I couldn't tell you her name or where she lived at this point in time. But she was on the phone with me for an hour, and she was really needed some psychiatric help. And I talked to her for a while, and I told her, you know, your daughter needs you, and she loves you. And I'm like, and I love you, and I want to support you, and I want you to stay in touch and let me know how you're doing. 3 months later, that woman sent me a message with some pictures of her and her daughter. That night, she had taken herself to the emergency room after I spoke to her. And in her message, she told me that I didn't know this, but sitting next to her, she had a rope ready to hang herself. Talking about it makes me emotional. She was ready to kill herself, and she kept her call with me. And she's like, I don't know why I got on that call. When you called, I answered it. And she said, you saved my life because I was ready to kill myself. And I had no idea.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the most powerful things for me, because I knew this woman was never going to work with me. She didn't have a dime. So I stayed on the phone that long with her because I knew she needed support. And that was a really powerful moment for me, because
Talk about a signal from the universe telling you that you're in the right place.
Yeah, and that's why I do what I do, you know. And when I say I grow every day, like my clients, as they grow, I grow. So yeah, I get that like emotional piece just talking about that, right? Because those things are so easy on a tough day to not remember, right? On one of those exhausting days when you're just like grinding through life and you're trying to pay your bills like everybody else, it's hard to remember why you do what you do.
You're on a good journey. That's what I'd say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that clearly comes through in your energy and your passion.
No doubt.
All of that.
It's infectious.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you give off good energy. So
that's the best kind of infection to have.
Exactly. The good kind of infection. That's right.
Right? If I'm going to be passing around some infections. Yeah, it's
I was just going to say,
that's what I hope for. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was going to ask you a completely different question, but
yeah, no, go ahead.
No, the question was, how do our listeners reach out to you if they want to? Do you have do you have some I don't know, some what do we call them, coordinates that you want them to
yeah, my compass, my map coordinates. Well, pretty simple, kind of like you did. You can go to my website, and like everything's just my name, so it's like Kelley Sgroi. If you Google Kelley Sgroi, every way to reach me apparently comes up, including my home address, just for those who are curious, because I've had people like send me stuff here. It's really strange. Yeah, you can just Google my name or get my email address from you guys. I'm on Facebook.
Yeah,
and we'll put a link to your
Instagram.
website and
Yeah, it's all my name. I'm still like, everything I have is public so that you can reach out. Yeah, and with coaching being the way it is, it's easier to work with people just about anywhere. Telehealth has lightened up, so our restrictions aren't as great. So the biggest complication for a lot of people, especially out of state, is that I don't work with insurance. So because insurance is a nightmare if you've ever worked with insurance. I use an outside billing agency that handles some of my insurance, but for the most part, it's self-pay, and it's just, that makes it so that I can do my job and not spend so much time on the phone with the insurance companies, really.
You bet.
Gotcha. And for those that are listening and don't necessarily see the notes, spelling of your name is Kelley, what I would say the traditional spelling, Kelley, correct?
EY.
EY. See,
Yeah.
I jacked that up.
Yeah.
Kelley, and your last name is Sgroi,
G.
SGROI.
ROI.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
That's a great 3-letter ending to a name,
Yeah.
especially doing what you're doing, because people are getting some return on their investment by spending time talking with you, no doubt.
Look at that. How about that? I just never, that is perspective right there. I have never noticed that. I did have a kid client who, when I first moved down to Florida, I worked with, and on my name tag, it said Kelley therapist, and he used to call me Kelley the rapist. And I'm like, that's not even funny.
Oh my
That's just
goodness.
not cool.
Stop
He's
that.
like, it's Kelley the rapist. I'm like, it's therapist. I don't wear that name tag anymore. What kids will come up with
Yeah. The damnedest things.
Ugh.
all
Out
the
of the mouth of
time.
babes.
Yeah, that's an exception to out of the mouths of babes.
Right.
Yeah, that was like, no, let's not go there. Don't repeat that anywhere. I see Kelley the rapist. Yeah, good times. Good
Yeah.
times. Where are you located actually?
We're in Virginia,
Oh, okay.
in Fredericksburg,
far.
Virginia, just
Right.
about midways between Richmond and Washington, D.C.
Nice. So
Yeah.
it's starting to warm up for you guys too.
It's trying.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
trying. But this is Virginia. We can have all 4 seasons and sometime in the same week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Except that, well, probably not where you are, but I was in Virginia Beach one time and it snowed like a half an inch, and the Virginia Beach closed down for a week. So,
Oh, it happens here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, being born and raised in Connecticut, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know. All I know is that in the winter in Connecticut, they still drive better than the people drive here in Florida all year long.
Oh yeah, amen to that.
Oh my goodness. I was back up north last weekend and it was so nice to drive. I was driving from Queens, because I flew into JFK, to Stamford. And even then I said to my kids, it was nice to be able to drive in predictable traffic. Like I knew what the traffic was going to do, not like down here when you're like, oh God, you're taking your life in your hands.
So Kelley, what have we not asked you that we need to ask you?
I don't know. The names of my cats.
All right, what you got? Names of your cat.
My cats are not they're not very, one's over here. It's not original. I have a female who's gray and white and her name is Gray. And I have her brother who is black and white and his name is Oakley. So it's a little more original, but I don't really know. What else would you like to know?
I feel like we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
And
I can tell you
shared
creepy stories about online dating if you want. That's a whole nother segment. Like,
Okay, give us one of those. I'm intrigued now.
Wow.
I have had men from like a Match profile or one of those things look me up because like, I used to put my occupation as therapist. So they see my first name, the town I live in, and my occupation, and they Google my name with my town and the word therapist, and I show up. And if I don't respond to them on these dating apps, they make an appointment with me for therapy. And then halfway through the session, they'll tell me, this has happened to me 4 times. They'll tell me, well, I'm really only here because I saw you on such and such a dating app and you didn't answer me. So, and I'm like, okay, that is frightening, and bye-bye.
There's a word for that.
Wow.
There's a word for that, right? I think they call that stalking.
Right.
I think that's, yeah. Is it bad though that I make them pay me for the session?
Oh, absolutely not.
No. That's great. No.
Like, you gotta pay me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the whole session, even if we cut it short. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, full disclosure, I did carry my weapon for a while to sessions, but
That's good too.
God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you. Right.
No, I have my life all in all is very simple.
Yeah, this has been wonderful though. It has, and I've enjoyed the conversation very much. And I think there's more than one or two really good nuggets for our guests to
Good.
leech on
Hope
to
so.
and carry away. And for me personally, it was the point that you were making about well, it just flew out of my mind. The looking within instead of without, the whole external forces thing. That's just a good
Yeah.
reminder for everybody that don't live your life in accordance with everything else going on around you. Live it, based on what you need, what you want, who you are as a person. That's great stuff.
Yeah, I love the point about having those things that are significant accomplishments that you sometimes forget, right? So when you're having a crappy day,
Right.
you're down on yourself. There's folks out there that will talk about having an I love me box or something like that, or a collection of things where you have experiences like that written down, or maybe notes from somebody that they've sent it to you and shared with you the impact that you've had on their life, or things of that nature. And it's good to have those at the ready in case you are having a crappy day, because I think having crappy days happens to people periodically.
Oh, without a doubt.
You gotta develop skills to get yourself out of them. And some people it's music, or going out and riding a motorcycle, or doing something that will take your mind off of what's going on and kind of let you reset, recharge. And having those little nuggets of things that you have done that have been a tremendous positive impact on other people certainly helps. So keep those.
And
Put them in a
sometimes you
little
just
box
need
somewhere.
to sit in a crappy day, right? Sometimes our body just is like, you know what? I just don't know what's wrong. I've noticed for me that I get in a funk like every few months for like a week or so. And I usually try to fight it. And then I go, well, all right, this is just, I don't know what's going on. But usually I come out the other side of it and some major transition happens. Like it's just a way for me to integrate. And back to the, chasing that external thing, I say all the times that perfection is an illusion, but we spend our lifetime chasing this illusion, trying to achieve this thing that doesn't exist and if we don't realize it, like for me, I was on that path of chasing this illusion of perfection and thinking I was someday going to achieve it, and realizing, wow, I wasted half my life chasing something that doesn't exist. And now I can go, wow, I'm gonna start chasing the reality of my life, right? Doing the things that make me feel alive instead of chasing something that just makes me feel like I'm dying inside.
Yep.
So I focus on that.
Yeah. Wonderful.
No day, it's not perfect. None of it's perfect, right? Nothing, it's not always good,
Yeah.
We say healing we want it to look like a straight line, but it's really a big squiggly mess.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, this
Kelley,
it's been great.
We certainly can't thank you enough for taking time to be on
Thank
here.
you for having
Thoroughly
me.
enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to putting this information out there and sharing it with others.
Don't forget the buttons.
What button? I don't forget buttons.
Don't
I mean,
forget
not
the button.
not usually twice in the same episode, anyways.
Not yet.
All right, that's right. I'm gonna hit this button over here. I even hit the right one. Imagine that. And then I'm gonna say something like, no matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing, make sure between this podcast and the next, you take time to enjoy the ride.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. Please subscribe so you'll receive notification when new episodes are available. To learn more about the Graybeards, visit their website, graybeardchronicles.com.